Man, I have a really good idea for a new RPG, but I will need to really test this in multiple ways. Uh, wait, where is everyone? Darren? What ya? Trezin? Anyone?
Sorry I'm late. Dean Sealer was causing some issues in the kitchen.
Wait, he doesn't have arms or legs. What could he possibly be doing?
Look, I don't know how, but he managed to incite a riot among the sloppers, who were only fighting themselves. No, I don't know what they were fighting over, but I'm going to tie Dean Sealer's tendrils together next I see him.
That's probably why he's going to be hiding from you, huh? Like, if I were to do something like that, I'd be hiding from you, watching from the shadows.
Without a doubt, he's hiding from me, probably watching right now from the ventilation systems. Honestly, I'm going to be setting up traps while listening to Elton John.
I'm still standing?
What? No, though I do enjoy that one. No, I was thinking Crocodile Rock.
I can respect that choice. A good song, though I will admit I prefer heavier music.
Understandable. Most of my old warband prefer that too. I'm pretty sure Perturabo also listened to that a lot. I imagine it's perpetually pumped into his brain at this point.
He recently got a story about him. I don't know if it's a reveal that he's the next Primarch release, or a tease about an upcoming book, or just a short story about him. But the artwork about him makes him look bigger than a titan.
That actually sounds on brand, yeah, but what were you talking about before I came in?
Oh yeah, I have an idea that I'm only in the early stages of planning, but it's an idea that might work. Of course, I think in order to test the idea, we'll need to work in opposite ways that most TTRPGs would normally work. And no, I don't mean with artwork then design. I mean making a CRPG first, then the tabletop version.
Alright, tell me this idea. I love a good CRPG.
Look, I don't know if it'd be good, but let's talk about this idea. I want to start this out by mentioning I have very little to no images so far to be as examples of this information. So this video is probably best on a second monitor or as background noise while you're doing something else. I know I wrote this while listening to information about Yu-Gi-Oh cards. So I'm thinking of a deck building TTRPG. I have played a little bit of Demio. I think it's called, actually, let me double check real quick. Yeah, Demio. A VR game with a desktop version of it where you draw cards to perform actions. Yes, this game is a bit of an inspiration, but so is my recent stint into card games. So let's talk about my idea. So obviously, at a base, I can only talk about the ideas. I've yet to come up with real mechanics, just simple ideas. So I'd love it if the audience, you, were to comment some recommendations. My ideas at the moment are rather simple. There's 3 roles in mind out the get-go: tank, damage, and healer. Each of these will split into multiple subtypes. I suppose archetypes is a good descriptor. Tanks will have block, parry, and dodge base options. Damage will have magic, ranged, and melee options. Healer will have what I can only describe as support, medic, and shield, if that makes sense, I guess. Of course, each of these archetypes could have multiple different build options too, but my idea is to essentially have 3 different stats. So far, what I'm thinking is might, mobility, and magic. You'll probably start a combat encounter with your own stat number in points, and you'll spend the points to use the ability cards that you can draw. At the beginning of an encounter, you'll draw 3 cards, maybe 5, I've yet to decide, with 3 options being free. Move, basic attack, and analyze. You'll draw one card every time your turn happens, and you can spend points to play said cards. I'm thinking each card will roll a d6 in order to determine success or failure. So say you start with 1 magic, 2 mobility, and 3 might. You can use the free movement to move so far, then you can do a quick analyze to give yourself a bonus 1 on your free attack, or you can replace that free use of might in order to play a card that would cost 1 to 3 points. On the next turn, you'll gain 1 in everything, up to a max. I don't know what that max is yet, in order to possibly play stronger cards. Now, as I said, I'm intending on essentially having 3 archetypes with multiple subclass sort of vibes beneath those. As I said, the tanking methods are block, dodge, and parry. Block will obviously be primarily intended for shields, blocking, deflecting, and thrusting weapons sort of things. Of course, parry might lead to a riposte sort of attack of opportunity, which I'll need to figure out how to balance that out, but that's a future me issue. But I think the primary sort of things you may be interested in are the damage and healer rules. Damage I marked, or at least have thought of now, melee, ranged, and magic. You can utilize the might, magic, and mobility skills for multiple of these, honestly. Melee can be barbarians or fighters fighting style. Might use of that. Thief and assassins might use mobility, and I shouldn't have to give you a descriptors for magic. You know what magic is. Range is obviously primarily built around mobility, but some may have might options too, for example a great bow. Meanwhile, the healer role, so far what I'm thinking, is an archetype built around mending wounds, so an actual healer, one around giving buffs and debuffs, and one around putting magic shields around allies or locking down enemies. Now, I haven't figured out how enemies will work. Do I have one hand for the whole GM that may be running multiple enemies? Do enemies have archetypes or just general abilities that happen? Do each enemy have a cost to certain abilities, or do they have no cost to anything? The enemy encounters are things I need to think about the most, but I'll flush this stuff out in the future. Of course, leveling up in an RPG is important. My idea is that as you level up, you can add 3 cards to your personal deck. Your deck being your life bar, essentially, while also being how you use abilities. When you run out of cards to draw, you die. So dealing damage to an enemy essentially means they discard cards off the top of their deck, while healing would be adding cards from the discard or I guess grave pile and putting them back into your deck, either at the bottom or shuffling them back in. But each card will require certain stats and certain levels, and some cards can chain into each other, allowing a very unique build. I've got a lot of fleshing out with this, so I would really appreciate some ideas and advice on how to go about this. Like I said, this idea is just at the very beginning of planning, so I've only got the very basic concepts so far. Now, I need to assemble a few Malstrain, Gene Stealers, and Brood Scum, so shove off.